later before the meal arrives. Thank you, Gabe and Jim. I couldn't imagine being more grateful for an introduction. These are two people that I've known a long, long time. I taught here at the University of Virginia. I love this school. It's just an incredible place filled with tradition and history and respect, the kind of qualities that I really admire, that I want to see preserved in American society. And this is one of the places that I just love for preserving that. I think the honor code alone at the University of Virginia just is something that every university administrator should study and look at and say, you know, why can't we do that too? So I think there are a lot of things about this place to love. I'm going to talk today on the topic of time management. The circumstances are, as you probably know, a little bit unusual. I think at this point I'm an authority to talk about what to do with limited time. My battle with pancreatic cancer started about 1.5 years ago. Fought, did all the right things, but it's, you know, as my oncologist said, if you could pick off a list, that's not the one you'd want to pick. So on August 15th, these were my CAT scans. You can see that if you scroll through all of them, there were about a dozen tumors in my liver. And the doctors at that time said, you are likely to have I love the way they say it, you have 3 to 6 months of good health left. Right? Optimism and positive phrasing. It's sort of like when you're at Disney, what time does the park close? The park is open until 8. So I have 3 to 6 months of good health. Well, let's do the math. Today is 3 months and 12 days. So what I had on my day timer for today was not necessarily being at the University of Virginia. I'm pleased to say that we do treat with palliative chemo. They're going to buy me a little bit of time, on the order of a few months, if it continues to work. I am still in perfectly good health. With Gabe in the audience, I'm not going to do push-ups because I'm not going to be shown up. Gabe is really in good shape. But I continue to be in relatively good health. I had chemotherapy yesterday. You should all try it. It's great. But it just sort of begs the question, I have finite time. Some people have said, you know, so why are you going and giving a talk? Well, there are a lot of reasons I'm coming here and giving a talk. One of them is that I said I would. Right? That's a pretty simple reason, and I'm physically able to. Another one is that going to the University of Virginia is not like going to some foreign place. People say, aren't you spending all your time with family? And by coming back here for a day, I am spending my time with family both metaphorically and literally, because it turns out that many of you have probably seen this picture from the talk that I gave. This is my niece and nephew, Chris and Laura. And my niece, Laura, is actually a senior, a 4th year here at Mr. Jefferson's University. So, Laura, could you stand up so they see what you've gotten taller? There we are. And I couldn't be happier to have her here at this university. And the other person, so that's Laura. The other person in this picture is Chris. And Chris, if you could stand up so they see you've gotten much taller. And they have grown in so many ways, not just in height. And it's been wonderful to see that and be an uncle to them. Is there anybody here on the faculty or PhD students of the history department? Do you have any history people here at all? Okay. Anybody here who's from history? Find Chris right after the talk, because he's currently in his sophomore year at William & Mary, and he's interested in going into a PhD program in history down the road. And there aren't many better PhD programs in history than this one. So I'm pimping for my nephew here. Right? Let's be clear, all right? So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about, you know, this is not like the lecture that you may have seen me give before. This is a very pragmatic lecture. And one of the reasons that I had agreed to come back and give this is because Gabe had told me that, and many other faculty members had told me that they had gotten so much tangible value about how to get more done. And I truly do believe that time is the only commodity that matters. So this is a very pragmatic talk, and it is inspiration in the sense that it will inspire you by giving you some concrete things you might do to be able to get more things done in your finite time. So I'm going to talk specifically about how to set goals, how to avoid wasting time, how to deal with a boss. Originally this talk was how to deal with your advisor, but I've tried to broaden it so it's not quite so academically focused, and how to delegate to people. Some specific skills and tools that I might recommend to help you get more out of the day, and to deal with the real problems in our life, which are stress and procrastination. I mean, if you can lick that last one, you're probably in your money almost as if they are the same thing. And of course, Ben Franklin knew that a long time ago. So you got to manage it, and you got to manage it just like you manage your money. Now, I realize not all Americans manage their money. That's what makes the credit card industry possible, and apparently mortgages too. So, but those people do at least understand it. They don't look at you funny if you say, well, can I see your monetary budget for your household? In fact, if I say your household budget, you presume that I'm talking about money, when in fact the household budget I really want to talk about is probably your household time budget. At the Entertainment Technology Center at Carnegie Mellon, students would come in, and during the orientation I would say, this is a master's program, everybody's paying full tuition, and it's roughly $30,000 a year, and the first thing I would say is, if you're going to come into my office and say, I don't think this is worth $60,000 a year, I will throw you out of the office. I'm not even going to have that discussion. And of course, they would say, oh God, this Pausch guy's a real jerk, and then they were right. But what I then followed on with was, because the money is not important, you can go and earn more money later, and what you'll never do is get the 2 years of your life back. So if you want to come into my office and talk about the money, I'll throw you out. But if you want to come into my office and say, I'm not sure this is a good place for me to spend 2 years, I will talk to you all day and all night, because that means we're talking about the right thing, which is your time, because you can't ever get it back. A lot of the advice I'm going to give you, particularly for undergraduates, how many people in this room are undergraduates, by show of hands? Okay, good. Still young. A lot of this, what did Hans and Franz on Saturday Night Live, if you're old enough? Hear me now, but believe me later. Right? A lot of this is going to make sense later, and one of the nice things is I gave a volunteer to put this up on the web. I understand that people can actually watch videos on the web now. So a lot of this will make sense later, and when I talk about your boss, if you're a student, think about that as your academic advisor. If you're a PhD student, think of that as your PhD advisor. And if you're watching this and you're a young child, think of this as your parent, because that's sort of the person who is in some sense your boss. And the talk goes very fast, and as I said, I'm very big on specific techniques. I'm not really big on platitudes. I mean, platitudes are nice, but they don't really help me get something done tomorrow. The other thing is that one good thief is worth 10 good scholars. And in fact, you can replace the word scholars in that sentence with almost anything. All right? So almost everything in this talk is to some degree inspired, which is a fancy way of saying lifted, from these two books. And I found this book very useful, but it's much better to get them in distilled form. So what I've basically done is collected the nuggets for your bath. I like to talk about the time famine. I think it's a nice phrase. Does anybody here feel like they have too much time? Okay, nobody. Excellent. And I like the word famine because it's a little bit like thinking about Africa. I mean, you can airlift all the food you want in to solve the crisis this week, but the problem is systemic, and you really need systemic solutions. So a time management solution that says, oh, I'm going to fix things for you in the next 24 hours is laughable, just like saying I'm going to cure hunger in Africa in the next year. You need to think long-term, and you need to change fundamental underlying processes because the problem is systemic. We just have too many things to do and not enough time to do them. The other thing to remember is that it's not just about time management. That sounds like a kind of a lukewarm